Welcome to The Explainer. So if you've ever found yourself spending hours, and I mean hours, clicking through the Azure portal to set up an environment, all the while just hoping you didn't miss a critical setting, well then this one's for you. Today, we're going to break down how you can automate all of that, moving from those manual clicks to consistent, repeatable code. All right, let's just dive right in. Here's our game plan. First, we'll talk about why doing things by hand is, well, a problem. Then we'll get into the solution, this idea of infrastructure as code. After that, we'll decode ARM templates and then meet their much friendlier sibling, Bicep. And finally, we'll tie all together and see how you can put this stuff to work. So first up, let's talk about where most of us start, deploying resources by clicking around in the Azure portal. I mean, this feels familiar, right? You go into the portal, you fill out all the little forms, you configure the settings, and you hit that big blue Create button. And yeah, it works for one virtual machine. But what happens when you need to do it again for a test environment or for another region? It gets old fast. And honestly, it's pretty nerve-wracking. And this whole manual approach, some people call it ClickOps, it is just loaded with risk. A simple typo, a forgotten checkbox. Those little human errors can cause huge security problems or take your app down. It makes it almost impossible to guarantee that your dev and your prod environments are exactly the same. And forget about scaling, it's just not going to happen. Okay, so what's the better way? Well, it's this really powerful concept called infrastructure as code, or IAC for short. So instead of clicking around in a web browser, you define your entire setup. I'm talking servers, networks, databases, all of it in plain text files. These files become your single source of truth. You can check them into Git, have your teammates review them, and reuse them over and over. It brings all the discipline of software development to your infrastructure. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Think about the difference here. An imperative approach is like giving a taxi driver step-by-step, turn-by-turn directions. You're telling them how to get there. The declarative way? You just give them the destination address. You tell them what you want. And that's the magic of templates. You just declare, I want a virtual network and a VM. And Azure's brain, the Azure Resource Manager, it figures out all the steps to make that a reality. And in Azure, this whole declarative model is built on something called an ARM template, which stands for Azure Resource Manager. So what is an ARM template, really? At the end of the day, it's just a JSON file. That's it. It's the blueprint that tells Azure exactly what to build and how to configure it. It's the native language of Azure. In fact, when you're clicking around in the portal, what's happening behind the scenes is that the portal is just building one of these JSON files and submitting it for you. Now, every one of these templates has a few key parts. You've got parameters, those are your inputs, like what to name your VM. You have variables for stuff you want to reuse inside the template. But the three big ones, the ones you absolutely have to have, are the schema, the content version, and of course, the resources block. That's the heart of it all. It's where you list out everything you want to build. But there's a catch. And this quote from John Seville just hits the nail on the head. While ARM templates are super powerful, writing raw JSON with all those brackets and commas and quotes, it's not fun. It's really easy to make a mistake, and it can be super hard to just look at a big file and understand what it's even doing. And that exact problem, that complexity, is why Microsoft created a much better way to write these templates. It's a language called Bicep. And wow, this slide just says it all, doesn't it? On the left, you've got all that noisy JSON just to create a simple storage account. And on the right, that's the Bicep code to do the exact same thing. It is so much cleaner, so much shorter, and you could actually read it and understand what's happening at a glance. So Bicep just makes the whole experience of writing these templates way better. You get better error checking, better autocomplete. It's great. But here's the most important part to understand. Bicep doesn't replace ARM. It's an abstraction, a nicer language that sits on top of ARM. When you go to deploy a Bicep file, it first gets compiled or translated into a standard ARM JSON file. So you get the simple, clean authoring experience of Bicep with all the proven, powerful reliability of the ARM engine running underneath. Okay, so let's move from theory to practice. How does this all come together in a real workflow that you can actually use? You know, the process is actually pretty straightforward. A fantastic way to get started is to build something manually in the portal one last time, and then find the Export Template button. That'll give you the JSON, which you can then use as a starting point. From there, you clean it up, maybe turn it into Bicep, you make it more flexible with parameters, and then you use a command line tool to deploy it. Then Azure takes over and makes sure the cloud matches what's in your code.
So by moving from clicks to code, you're doing so much more than just automating. You're creating a system for managing your Azure environment that's versioned, that's testable, and that's reliable. You get speed, you get consistency, and you get confidence. So really, the only question left to ask yourself is, what's the first thing you're going to automate?